Hey, how you doing? Okay, let's make some gameplay. So, I'm going to turn my desk camera on, which I didn't do before, and so I've restarted. And I'm going to grab this cylinder and drop it in. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to make ourselves a base, okay? Very simple base. I've got my snaps on for 10 here, so I'm going to drag this up. And I'm going to make a scale of 5 by 5 by 0.1, so that'll be 10 centimeters thick and 5 meters in radius, I believe. It could be diameter. There we go, just pull it down. Bomp. Bomp. There, that looks right. So now we can start on top of this. And what I'm going to do is I am going to place a start actor just here. So here's my player start. There we go. And I'm going to start with us looking across the valley, like so. So there we go. So I'll click play. And let's just test it works. Now remember, there's a lot of foliage in this level, and so that's one of the reasons why this is, quite slow. If you wanted to speed up, we can get rid of the foliage for the time being, and I think I probably should do that. Okay, I'm not saying you should, but I will, just to make things a little bit faster, because I've got 1,294,000 instances of geometry. There we go, gone. You don't have to do that, I'm just doing it for recording purposes. Okay, so now if I click play, much faster. Hello, like that. Now, what we want to do is we want to go across here and we want to get to the other platform. And when we get to the other platform, okay, that is our win scenario. It's a long way to this other platform as well. So what I'm going to do, pardon me, is I'm going to build a second little platform over here. So let's go to our basic shapes, cylinder, basic shape of our cylinder, copy that. And this time I'm just going to manually scale it out and make it thinner. There we are. Put that there. Okay, so this is our finish point and our start point. And they're nice and far from each other. Now, what we can do in order to, make things a little bit more difficult for the player is they can't drop down into this. If you drop down into this, we want the player to go, oh no, and die. So, if we go across to our volumes, we've got this kill zone volume, okay? So I'll drag this to here, and I'm going to scale it up. So I want it to be roughly the width and length of this entire valley. There we go. And I want it to be so that if they fall into it, so as soon as you get to about here, okay, the kill zone is going to activate. So there we go. I've got it overlapping nicely. We fall into here, player dies. And we can test that's going to work. If we look over here, we've also got terminal velocity and all this kind of stuff. It's not a water volume. So I'll hit save, hit play, and now, like a lemming, let's just leap over the edge. Do. Bye. Oh no, oh dear, I'm dead. Okay, that's a very simple death handler, but that's what's happened. I have died. Game will not continue. Now, let's find a way of making it so that we can get across here. So first things first, we should probably start building a bridge. Now, what we could do to build a bridge is, if I again go to my place actors and just get a cube, because a cube is, literally the basic of everything, I could just duplicate this multiple times, like so. Or I could even just scale it across and do it that way. But if you look, this is lower than up here, okay? So there is going to be some variance needed. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a new blueprint that's just came out inside of Unreal Engine, which is for making things procedurally. So if I go up here to edit and go to my plugins, and over here what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in procedural, and you'll see here procedural content generation framework. So I'll click that and I'll click restart. It'll ask me to save everything. Okay, so let's slow it down a little bit because this is some, meaty stuff really. So we want to make sure that no one's getting left behind, as it were. Some of this you might need to pause and come back to as well. So just a little bit of a heads up here. Anyway, I'll just check everything's working okay. You'll notice that part of my level had vanished before, and that's because I'm using the world partitioning system. Okay, I'm using streaming worlds, and so what it does is it unloads some stuff. We're not worrying about that. We want to make sure this works. Now, it loads it at runtime, so don't worry. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to build this PCG bridge here. So what I need to do is open up my content browser, and inside of content, just like we did with my assets, I'm going to do a right click, new folder, PCG. Okay, so I know where my PCG stuff is. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a blueprint. And this blueprint's only going to contain one thing, and that one thing is a spline. So right click, blueprint class, I'm going to create an actor, BP, spline path. And then I'm going to hit Control S to save it, and just double click to open it up. Just wait a moment. There we go. Now as you can see, it's got nothing in it at all. So I'm going to add spline. So I just clicked add up there, and you can see I've got two choices. I've got a spline mesh or a spline. I want a spline. And there, all it's done is it's placed this single use spline inside of here. Okay, that's really useful, but another thing I want to do as well is I want to add a tag to this. And the reason I want to add a tag to this is because when I run my procedural generation script, it's going to need to know which item I want to generate it on. And if I don't have a tag to let it know, then it's going to be, you know, pretty confused, to be fair. So what I've done is I've just clicked up here, BP spline path, and I'm going to type in the word tag over here in details. And as you see, we've got none. So I'm going to add one, and I'm just going to type bridge, all in lowercase, and hit compile and save. There we go. Okay, so now that I've done that, what I can do is I can create a procedural tool. So right click, and you see here we've got this PCG, and here's this PCG graph. So I'll click on that, and I'm going to call this PCG basic. I spelt it wrong. Basic. I spelled bridge wrong as well. Brilliant. Basic bridge. Okay, now let's open it up. Now this looks very, very similar to what we've been using with materials and blueprints, but with a slightly different layout. You'll notice we've got an input and output here. Now I'm not going to be using either of those, okay, so I'll just move them down here out of the way. I'm not going to delete them, but I'm not going to use them. And if you remember, we're going to be using splines. What was that weird beeping noise? Oh well, never mind. We're going to be using splines, right? So in order to use splines, what I need to do is I need to get my spline data. So if I right click, I'll just type in get spline, and there it is there. Spatial get spline data. Fab. Okay, so with that selected, you'll notice that there's various things I can do in here. Okay, we can look over here on the right. So we can filter on tags. Now, what I'm going to do is at the minute we've got this actor filter for self, so it's only looking at itself, it's only looking at this PCG file, right? What I want to do is I want to click here and change this to all world actors, so it's going to check everything. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to tell it, well, it needs a tag, you know, look for one by tag, and you can see actor selection by tag here, actor selection tag bridge. So now it knows that, you know, we're looking for anything that has bridge connected to it. So that's the first part done. Now the next thing we have to do is we need to tell this that, you know, we want it to work with the spline data. So if I drag out, and I'm going to type spline, there we go, and there's a spline sampler. So this is going to generate points along the given spline of a certain distance. Now that's important for us to know, and I'll explain why in a moment. So let's just move that to there. And if we look over here, you've got different things. So mode subdivision, mode distance. Subdivision is like a subdivision along the spline, a certain amount. So if your spline's like 100 meters long and you've got a subdivision of 10, then it's going to have basically 1 point every 10 meters. But what we're going to do instead is we're going to tell it that if we get our cube, here it is here, drop it into our scene. If we go and look at it, so browse to cube in content browser and mouse over, we can see it's 100 by 100 by 100, yeah? Brilliant. Well, that means that in my spline sampler, I'll set the mode to distance, and I'll set the distance increment to 100. And what that means is every 100 units it will place another one of these. The reason that's useful is because our thing's only 100 units long, so that means that it's going to place these every 100 units and make the bridge for us. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to spawn our mesh. So if I drag this out and do static mesh spawner, there we go. And what we can do next is we can tell it, well, we want this to produce a mesh. Now you'll see here mesh entries has nothing in it. So I'll just click plus to add an element, and we get this little arrow, and I'll open it up, and under descriptor open that up, and we get all of this. But the only thing I'm interested in at the minute is the static mesh that goes in there. And the static mesh that goes in there is going to be this cube. So I'll select it and click that arrow. And now our static mesh is going to go and be spawned. So let's have a look now and see if our actual spline and our actual PCG can do anything. So I'm just going to move this out of the way, and we haven't put the spline into the scene yet. So if I come down to my content, go to PCG, and here's my spline path just there, and I'm going to angle it 90 degrees so it's going to start going across the old thing over here. And then I'm going to drag in my PCG basic bridge and put it next to it. And when I do, look what's happened. Suddenly this, we can see the line down the middle, we've got two cubes. Fab. What that means is that this is working already. Okay, so now if I was to grab my blueprint for the spline, so BP spline path, if we look in it, we can see that we've got a start spline and an end. Okay, and I can move these around, and if I move them, it fills it in. So it's automatically starting to put in these cubes. So what that means is that I could now drag this all the way over here, and I can see this is probably going to be a little bit offset as well, so I'll drag it all the way down to about here, and I can see I'm a little bit low, but that's okay. Raise it up a little bit and back a little bit and up. There we go, and we basically have this long straight bridge. Now that's all well and good and awesome and all that kind of thing, but, and again a big but, it's just a straight line. We could have done this with a scale, but this is a spline, and because we're using this PCG generation kit, if I right click and add a new spline point, I can drag it up and I can start curving things. Now you'll notice that we've got some weirdness going on here. That's because this bezel or Bezier curve here is a little bit large. Now we could bring that in, and if we bring that in, you'll notice that it reduces this rather heftily. There we go, move it down to about there. And now our bridge starts to develop all sorts of funky shape. So I'll come in here, right click, add another spline point, and I'll bring this one down. And note that we can adjust the curve just by using this. So there we go. You can twist it and do all sorts of funky things to it like that, as you can see. So now we start to get this really cool kind of moving, twisting kind of road. I'll move this back across to here, I think, just to make it a bit straighter. There we go. There. See? So we get a lot more control over it. But there's other things as well that we can do about this. Okay, so at the minute we're just producing this static mesh and it's a cube. What we could do is we could say, let's make it road shape. So what I could do there is I could go, well, on the output I can transform. There we go. And let's transform these points. So I'll just select that to there, and I'll get rid of this middle line by holding Alt and click. There we go. So now we've got this transform points. Now what that's going to allow us to do, and I'll just scale this down a little bit so you can see a little bit easier, is that's going to allow us to change the scale on this. Now at the minute our scale is uniform, but if I change our turn that off and change our minimum scale to 0.1 and our maximum to 0.1, you can see, by the way, they've all changed together because this locks on, so I'll undo it again. There we go. Just put it back the way it was. Transform points. So I'll turn this lock off here and here, and I'll change this scale to 0.1 and this scale to 0.1. And you can see now we've got a flat road. Okay, this flat road is kind of coming through and doing its thing. And you can see that we still have some spaces occasionally, but that's okay, because what we could do is we could change our scaling on this. If I change it to 1.2, 1.2 for the X, now suddenly it fills in all the gaps as well. And this is only one thing, okay? Remember, I said that it's a lot more complicated than that. There's a lot more we can do with PCG. So I could use this PCG, for example, to create side rails and all sorts of things if I wanted to, that would, you know, make this work really, really well. Oh, sorry about that. I paused for a second and moved my camera, so the sudden jerkiness, just ignore that. But yeah, we can use PCG for, you know, building railings on the side, all sorts of things. I use this for all kinds of like really fun, complicated items. It's great fun to use and it saves you an absolute boatload of time. So to explain, what I could do is I could just grab all three of these things here, Control C, Control V, stick it underneath like that, connect them together, and if I go to my transform points over here, just to show you, I'll change the scaling to, oh, let's say 0.2, 0.2, 3, 0.2, 0.2, 3, and I'll change the offset on this, so the minus 150, yep, that looks about right, minus 150. You see, so that is how you'd start creating supports. All I've done is created some more static meshes and I've just offset them so they're going underneath the road. And I can continue moving my road around. I can also, you know, move my, hang on a second, I'll just find the thing. There we go. I can move it around and everything will move with it. It will keep, you know, its shape. Okay, so now about this little thing here, we wanted a little puzzle where we come off here and we start. So what we're going to do is we're going to collect an object. So first things first, let's create the object. So I'll go to content and I don't have a My Blueprints folder, so I'll just quickly make one. My Blueprints, there we go. And the first thing we're going to do is make BP my key. So if I go to Blueprint class, make a new one. Actor, there we go. I'm going to call this my BP underscore my key. Okay, so BP my key like that. And my key is going to contain an object that's just floating in the air, and when you walk up to it, you'll collect the key. Bing. Okay, so what object can we use as a key? Well, we'll use this cone. So if I drag this cone into my scene, raise it up a little bit. Oh, that's not the right thing. There we go. Not sure why it was moving up the back. That's weird. It's moving the spline in the background instead of that. Shouldn't be doing that. There we go. Move that up. Move that up. Compile and save. I think that could be a bug to do with Unreal Engines. That's quite fascinating. And if I drag that into my scene now, you'll notice we get this kind of hovering kind of object. I'll make the scale a little bit smaller so it looks a bit more interesting, so maybe 0.2, 0.2 and a height of 0.4. Okay, so there, it looks like a little wizard's hat now. And we want to build a collision over the top of that as well, so I'll go into BP my key, go to viewport, and I'm going to add a box collision. Okay, so this box collision is basically going to handle, you know, is someone overlapping this? And if they are, then they're going to collect this key and something's going to happen. Now what's going to happen? Well, what we need is we need an object over here, i.e. a gate, to open. Okay, so we want a gate to open if this runs. So what we're going to do is, I'll get rid of that, we'll go to our starter content, architecture, and we'll get our wall door 400 by 400. I'll just place it over the start there, and to make it more of a hazard, I'm going to make it so that you can't really get to it very easily. You have to go through the door. One there, and I'll be extra sneaky and copy them downwards. There you go. So it's going to be very hard to sneak around. And we need something here to block the door off. So I'll use this wall 400 by 200 and I'm going to turn it on its side like so. There, okay, so then we should be able to move this in, and I think I'll scale it a little bit as well there. That way it slides in and out. Okay, so as you remember from before, we made a very quick sequence, so we'll do the same again here. So what I'm going to do is I am going to hit compile and save. There we go. I'm going to build a sequence for this, so I'll go to my cube. Here we go, just so that we know, sorry, not cube, my tool up here, add level sequence. I'm going to call it sequence underscore game 1. There we go, just so it's got a name. And we're going to click on this door, right click, add it. Here we go, add it a sequencer. And we'll give it a 30-second warm up. So I'll click there. Then I'm going to bring it across. Oops, I did it wrongly there. I've got to do this first. There we go. So it's a very slow opener. There we go. Hit the keyframe and then move it all the way at the end. You don't have to do that, but I'm going to, and hit keyframe again. So now we've got a very simple door opening and closing thing here, yeah? Great. Now, what we need to do is we need to know whether or not we can actually make this function. Okay, this needs to know, can we make this function? Do we have that thing collected to go through this door? So what we're going to do is I'm going to close the sequencer, okay, because we do have the sequence, we can access that any time now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a new blueprint again. So if I'll go to my blueprints, we've got my key, so we'll go to right click, blueprint class, actor, there we go, and we'll call this one BP pressure plate lock. Okay, so this one's going to have a lock on it. Now, if I place it in my scene, just there we go, and open it up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a cube to it. There we go. And I'm going to change the scale on my cube to 0.1 so it's nice and flat, and then on top of this I'm going to add a box collision, and I'm going to increase the scale of my box collision quite a lot, not that much maybe, there, about that much, so that when you stand on top of it then something's going to happen. Okay, so what we want this to do is we want this to check and say, you know, have we gone and collected that item from over there? Okay, if we have, then we can do something. So over here, this blueprint, my key, what I'm going to do is open it up, and I'm going to say to it, on actor begin overlap, I want to set a variable. So let's make a new variable, and I'm going to call this got key question mark. Okay, so got key, and I'm going to drag that out, set got key, and I'm going to drag that to there. So when we overlap this now, it's going to set the variable got key, okay, and it's going to set it to true. So now it will be true instead of false. Now where that comes in important is because over here, when we're on the pressure lock, we want to check that value. And how are we going to check that value? Well, we know that we need to access BP my key, don't we? So if we go over here to our variables, we can actually add a variable called BP my key. So I could go into my variables just here and click plus, and I'm going to call this key check. There we go. And under its name, I'm going to type in BP underscore key. Is that what it was called? No, my key, sorry. BP underscore my key. There it is there, and I'll just click on it. Okay, and I'm going to make a nice little open eye there. So now I'll hit compile and save. So now, if I come to my scene, you can see here under key check, it's asking, you know, where it says none here, I can open it and click BP my key. And now this is referring to that key over there. Fab. Okay, so it's referring to that. What are we going to do? Well, if we go to my event graph, when we're overlapping in BP pressure plate, there we go, BP pressure plate, so event actor begin overlap, what we're going to do is we're going to check this key check just here, okay? So get key check. And we're going to read the value of the variable inside it called got key. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get got key. This will give us the value of it. I'm going to feed this into a branch. Okay, so now it's got a true and a false, and let's just connect these together. Okay, so what we can do for the minute is we can go to true and we can type print. There we go, print string. And we'll do it again for the bottom one as well, print. And for the bottom one, we'll type in locked. And for the top one, we'll type in unlocked. Excellent. Okay, now let's hit compile and save. So, if I try using it, play from here, walk over, the word locked appears in our top left corner because it is locked. But if I go over here and get this, just by walking up to it, you'll notice nothing happened because we haven't built any interactivity into it. And then walk back here, it now says unlocked. Well, that's really good. Okay, that's good. That's definitely doing what we wanted to. So now we just need to do a little bit of, you know, making it look pretty, as it were. So if I go to BP my key, event actor begin overlap, I can set got key to yes. And then what I want to do is I want to hide the actual mesh, okay, that we've got here. So if I go to my cone and I can just drag it into my scene and I can type set visible, connect these two together and have the new visibility as not visible. There's other options as well I can do for this. So for example, if I choose my cone and just scroll down, here we go, we could also enable physics on it or do just about anything we want to with it really. But the main one I've got here is I'm going to turn off visibility on it, okay? And I can also turn on hidden in game. So if I just drag that out and set hidden in game, not hidden. There we go, set hidden in game. Click yes on that and then do compile and save. Now, if I run over all the way to here, okay, it's vanished. Now, you could also make it play a sound, so it could go ping, for example. And then when we go over here, this is unlocked. Well, that's awesome. That means that now we can, you know, make it do something else. So I'll turn off my key, and if I find this, okay, my sec game 1, what I want to do is I want to get that in here, but I can't just right click and select it because it's not a part of this. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to create a second variable. So if I go to my variables here, and for my variables I'm going to have sequence to run, question mark, and I'm going to change its name here to level sequence, and it's just there, level sequence. Now if I hit compile and save and then select my actual blueprint, you'll see that, well, it's not visible. That's because I haven't clicked the little eye. Let's just do a quick fix of that. There we go. And now it'll ask us which sequence we want to run, and it's going to let us look at all the different sequences here, but I'm interested in sequence game, which is this pressure plate lock thing here really. So let's see, we want level sequence actor. There we go, compile and save, because we only want an actor that's been placed inside of the game, and now we can only select sequence game 1. So now what we can do is, if we come over here, as well as saying unlocked in debug, we could drag out our sequence to run, type in play, and then connect it together, just like we did in the level blueprint. And what that means is that if we now press play from here, go and get our key, and then come over here and go and use our door switch, then our door will open. And we can run across our narrow, scary bridge all the way to the finish point. And then all you need to do at the end, if we go all the way over here, whee, is if we just put a big old box collision just here and increase it in size, there we go. We could then open our level blueprint and we'll just delete all the stuff we're not using, do a right click, add event for this trigger box, collision, add on actor begin overlap, and just print you won. Like so. So now what we have is, even though it's simple, we have a complete kind of game just here. And I know it's basic, but the whole point is that I'd like you to expand upon this. So what you can do as well is you could leave clues by using the text system in the game. So, you know, we could literally just get text. Here's our text rendering actor just here. And if I just rotate it so the text's in a useful direction, there we are. We could just put, you know, this is the key. And I could just put it underneath here. And then the player will know exactly what that is. And now if I hit play, it's like, oh, there's the key. Now I have the key. Now I can go over here. The door will open. I can run across our long precarious bridge, which I can make very precarious. I can, you know, remember we can change the widths of this and all sorts of things, but we can run all the way down here. And you could have sequences so that things try and knock you off if you wanted to. You could do all sorts of things like that. Remember, all the previous lessons I've taught you about all the different things you can do in Unreal Engine. And we've only been doing this for a few hours together, and hopefully you can already see. And then we run over to here, jump up, you won! Oh, you see, you've done it. Now, I hope you're feeling in a more self-congratulatory mood, you know, than just you won. If you've followed along this far, it means that you've really done well in following this course, okay? There's a lot of material in this course, there was a lot of stuff to cover, and we've kept it into nice bite-sized chunks. But even just in this lesson today, you've learned about things like building, you know, a dynamic procedural bridge. You've learned about building some blueprints that interact with each other and the rest of the world in order to see whether something's locked or not. So you've done so much, and I think that this is a real occasion for you to say, well done me, I've done a good job if you followed this far. And remember, if you've had any problems at all, you can always get in touch and ask, you know, what does this do? Why doesn't this work the way I want it to work, etc. But the most important thing I want you to do is I want you to have fun. I want you to enjoy yourself, and I want you to be using Unreal Engine and just creating things for yourself, and eventually creating things hopefully that other people will play on as well. So go out there, have fun, make this even better, and then when you're done, hopefully we can do some other fun things together as well. So until then, thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye for now.